A warm welcome to all our viewers to our series Natural Medicine. And today we're going back into the subject of nature very deeply. We want to talk about TCM again today, about the various active teas that are already on the market today, who really have almost an ISO certification today, or it's in progress, to ensure that these special teas, which also have the effect, really have the proven effect through this ISO certification. So, and for this I invited a guest again, not just anyone, he's Professor Hans Rausch. Hans Rausch is a chemist, he's a biologist, he's one of the people who works in the field of phytotherapy, and he documented the active ingredients of over 3,000 plants to gold standards that the whole world works with. He's also the ombudsman with the German DIN standard, I think deputy, and yes, he's an expert in the field of pharmaceuticals. And I can have wonderful conversations with him about these natural gifts. I'm pleased and honoured. A very warm welcome, dear Hans. Hello. And hopefully we will be able to deal with interesting topics again today. Yes, I also took some notes. I'll get them quickly. I wrote down that there is a tea. It's called Xiao Yao Gan Cao. It's an anticonvulsive tea. And I'd like to talk to you about this anticonvulsive tea. Later, I'd also like to compare it to the Western alternative, magnesium, in the second part of the programme, which is also very pulsating. So, let's talk about this tea. Well, I try to adapt the name a little now. Xiao Yao Gan Cao Tang. So that's a Chinese description. Often, Chinese descriptions are very flowery. In that case, absolutely not at all, but it clearly describes what's in there. In this mixture, we typically have, again, hang on, let me take a step back. From experience, herbal medicines have been handed down for thousands of years. Not individual extracts, but usually always mixtures, where plants complement each other in their effects. They don't work against each other, but complement each other. That means that what you see many times in dietary supplements now makes my hair stand on end. Because then I see components that are simply randomly combined, let's say, in order to achieve positive effects that have been generated by advertising measures, and actually maybe cause more harm in the body than doing it any good. Well, that means we mix things that just don't belong together. If we use the traditional application, we've ensured for centuries, sometimes even millennia, that what shouldn't be in there isn't there either, but only the components necessary for the effect are appropriately combined. These mixes just don't have a history, do they? These mixtures have a tradition going back thousands of years. That said, I stumbled upon this mix, I'll get to the composition in a moment, stumbled upon this mix in Asia, because I never saw anyone there who whined about cramps, muscle cramps and so on. There isn't. Every grandma knows, every child knows, you have a cramp, you take this mixture. And when we look at the mixture, then we even know the plants in the West. Only the combination in this form is absolutely unknown in the West. Not used except by specialised TCM doctors, which have been using it successfully in Europe for 40 or 50 years. But it never went beyond this very limited circle. Well, I think that's so sad. We also have here in the West a history of herbal medicine. You take this and that with these and those things, but I've just the feeling, well, not the feeling, I'm convinced the knowledge is getting totally lost. That might still be there with the grandmas, but the knowledge is systematically lost because politics has failed to obtain this cultural asset. And that's what I would consider it to be. This is how it's viewed in Southeast Asia, because It can massively and positively influence and supplement our medical system. But that's very different in China. In China, this culture is lived and knowledge is passed on. And now with this new certification, according to DIN, where Japan, China, Taiwan, also under your involvement, not Taiwan, but Korea, because Taiwan is seen as part of China and is therefore not officially allowed to appear. Okay, good. And you're helping to ensure that a DIN standard is made there, but that these traditional teas, as they appeared back then, are still available today and will be preserved. And be assured of its effectiveness, that tampering, so wrong material has no place in it, that only high-quality raw materials are used. These are international efforts that are supposed to create a solid future basis for these medical fields as well. If I want to buy myself a tea for cramps now, and now just buy a TCM tea somewhere, I have no guarantee that what was actually described to me here is really in there. We don't even have it with Western products. Of course, you also have to consider a structure. In China, there are pharmaceutical companies for the domestic market. State surveillance is sometimes stricter there than in the West. So really restrictive with the highest quality levels, as they're developed in the West and lived there. And a pharmaceutical industry for export is actually only profit-oriented, but not effect-oriented. Where government monitoring takes place, but according to completely different criteria. In other words, we find material, often then partly declared as a dietary supplement and so on, and appears in stores. What is really in there, I'm now quoting a colleague from the Central Laboratory of the German Pharmacy from a couple of years ago, that there were goods they, let's say, confiscated at the airport, and over 60% A, did not have the ingredients that should have been in there, and B, partly had a very large number of ingredients that are considered highly critical, from carcinogenic to toxic and so on. In extreme cases, lead-containing road marking colour was used as a whitening agent to colour so-called medicinal products. So that was one of the reasons why the governments said, if we don't put a stop to it now, the image will be so destroyed that we can basically no longer save it for the next century. But that's completely understandable, and there's so much rubbish. Absolutely understandable. And a very important story. Now, if we come back to Xiaoyao Gaotang, I stated earlier that there are two plants that we all know. Number one, licorice. We know licorice as a sweet, been used for centuries in the European language area. We even use the term to grate licorice when we want to sweet talk someone. Yeah. Is the classic description of the most important activity of employees in a pharmacy, namely to provide a bad-tasting medicine with an additive that intensifies the effect. Licorice enhances the effect in many recipes. So it's actually a potent amplifier. It has its own effects too, but mainly has the effect of enhancing. And the second is peony roots. We all know the peony, and the root is also used in Western phytotherapy systems, but in no way related to licorice for cramps. This is a classic Asian application that has excellent effects. Whether these are muscle cramps, it continues with helping for female problems. So, in the area of, let's say, recurring monthly negative effects with stomach cramps, cramps in the abdomen, which are very painful for many women, up to neuronal cramps. So, efficient neurologists also work with this mixture that is described as licorice peony soup, xiao, yao, gan cao, and tang. So that means we don't even have, as I said before, such a flowery description. But clearly, there's licorice in it, there's peony in it, and the whole thing is hot and watery, so a soup and called tang. And that's actually used in China when women really have abdominal problems or those constant legs that twitch. Restless leg syndrome, a very important application, even in the West, just from the specialised TCM doctors, typically used since actually after World War II. Very experienced, works wonderfully, has no side effects. So it's described as free of side effects. An overdose can at most lead to a slightly softer stool, but nothing more. And then, it also tastes very good, thanks to the licorice taste. Very tasty. I found a naturopath, Christine, who tested this tea here, also with her patients, and we'll now quickly listen to what she is sending us as a testimonial about it.
Hello, I'm Christine Samtel. I've been a naturopath for over 30 years. I gave it to a patient who had had leg cramps at night for over a year. She had to go out 10 times a night, which of course disturbed the rest of the sleep badly. She was already pretty desperate, took a lot of magnesium. After she took the remedy, after about 3 times, she only needed to get up one more time, and then she just had a slight pull in her calves. So with this patient, I have to say, it was a very, very distinct symptom. I also like to use it for sciatica. Acute sciatica, acute cervical spine syndromes, anything that should actually relax the muscle. Even with recently operated spine patients, it brings clear ease and clear relief. The muscle is really nice and relaxed.
Very, very interesting. Now, it's just the question. The lady has now taken the right mixture with the active ingredients actually in it. Yeah, one thing has to be said clearly now. So, the traditional application in Southeast Asia is the decoction of the plant material. Very few people will do that in the West, simply for practical reasons. And with the implementation of compactates, a dosage form not previously known in Europe, in which I was also significantly involved in the development, simply to be able to implement the quality standards common in the West at all, this new form has been implemented, which is fully qualified from the seed to the end product. So these products do not yet have the ISO stamp, because this standard, which I also played a key role in developing, has not yet been finally released. It's a global standard, colleagues around the world are working on it and have to finally approve of it. These products already meet all the requirements of this future standard. Are these in the teas that I also have upstairs in that brown bottle? These are also these products that are made from compactates. We have to add one thing. So far, it has been the case that everything made from plant extracts can also be used in Western phytotherapy. And let's say as an imported product, for example, it's produced in India and so on, it has to be regarded as so-called pharmaceutical raw materials. Well, if a plant has an effect, then it has to be approved as a drug. Well, yeah, you have to approve it as a drug in the mixture in order to be able to give it an end product name. That said, herbal products are either registered or approved, depending on whether they're traditional or not. Well, of course, you just have to know the criteria. So, for traditional approval, it's necessary that it is within the EU, and the Swiss medical system is EU adapted, so it also applies to Switzerland, has been used here for at least 15 years without negative experience, and was used for at least 30 years in the country of origin in this composition without problems. So the 15-30-year rule is for traditional products. For those who don't achieve it, they then need a full license with the whole process. For the product we're now talking about, there is no need to talk about tradition. We've been using it in Europe for 70 or 80 years. We've used it in China for millennia. It's one of the ancient recipes, which already appear in the oldest pharmacopoeias, this combination. And the implementation of these compactates, according to the future new standards, have already led to that out of the German surveillance, which is, of course, EU harmonized. These products are no longer pharmaceutical raw materials, but really have retained their active ingredient character. This only works because a quality level has been reached that is similar to that of a chemically defined active ingredient, which often comes from Southeast Asia and is produced there under the highest quality standards. This means that compactates are unique. There are no others at the moment, active ingredients in pharmaceutical law, and can then be put together in the appropriate combination in the pharmacy. And where do I get this, for example? At the moment you can get them in some pharmacies in Germany that already use compactates, mainly with great national importance, the train station pharmacy in Kempten, which can also deliver throughout Europe, and in the future also in the Lions pharmacy in Zurich, which can then also serve the Swiss market as a non-EU market. Well, there I have the guarantee that I have exactly this active ingredient as a compactate. If you use it as a compactate, there's only one compactate manufacturer that achieves this quality level at all. Then I take a tablespoon of these granules and then dissolve it with water. Let's put it this way, there are corresponding dosage regulations, and please do not overdose because you don't know them. Good things don't necessarily have a positive effect in overdosing either. So I can only warn against just applying the old housewife wisdom, the more the merrier. It's the same for pharmaceutically active substances. Hopefully we won't do that with other drugs either. I would do it the same way. The right dosage leads to the right effect. Well, now we actually talked about this anticonvulsive drug, which is common in China. Abdominal problems, cramps, muscle pain, and so on. In Europe, magnesium is used very often in this regard for the same thing. And I like to remember a statement from you on another show where we talked about magnesium and viewed it as a placebo. And I'd like to ask you something else. How did you come up with this statement? Well, of course we have to put the whole thing into perspective now. I always say one thing, whoever heals is right. So if magnesium works for someone, they may stick with it. A real pharmacological effect in really extremely complex and large clinical studies could not be proven. So a real effectiveness of magnesium in the human organism against cramps is de facto, at the moment, in no way verifiable, according to science and technology. I've looked for and seen a few studies. There are a lot of studies that actually say No effect on magnesium has been documented, but I also find a lot of studies that claim the opposite. Are those less legitimate? No, the problem is always this one. If you ask people, does it improve, and it helped the people, then of course you'll document this result. But that does not mean that it is pharmacological. There can also be a psychological effect. Now, if you look at the big study by the Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich in 2016, then you'll find a number there that was actually shocking for me, that 75% of the effect in the patient is explained by the psychological effect and only 25% by the actual remedy. So that means many of the healing effects are in the head. If people believe in it, then we have placebos. Why do placebos usually work better than giving nothing? We have been using placebos for, I would say, almost 100 years in clinics. Many pain patients get a pain reliever in the evening, which consists only of glucose and are painless, because they assume it has to work. I know that Professor Harold Wallach recently did a study, patients and in all possible constellations, and what worked the most was when the doctors thought they were giving a drug, but it was a placebo, and the patients thought they were getting a drug. Yes, but that is also a psychological effect, how the doctor treats the patient. If the doctor radiates self-confidence, I am sure that I will heal my patient with the remedy. And the patient also takes this in a personal conversation, and I would say that communication between two people is not only based on the visual level or what is heard, but also on other levels. We say, I smell you, when we understand someone. That already manifests another pathway of reaction. But there is much more to the influencing. This means that the interaction between doctor and patient is not just about hearing, seeing, smelling, but also in completely different ways that have not yet been adequately described. Exactly, that's a huge topic, a huge barrel, and actually it's the premier class of medicine. Here you'd have to do your own research. Why does placebo work, and invest a lot of money to find out? We already mentioned the phrase, whoever heals is right. I don't deny anything, if it works. But for many, magnesium just doesn't work. Nor am I too much of a fan of giving excessive mineral salts. On the one hand, we regulate the amount of salt in food. Actually, for not really fundamentally based scientific reasons. And then, on the other hand, we throw 500 milligrams of magnesium at a time in the body. So, what really happens with this has not really been looked at closely, sufficiently anyway. Of course, we have one thing, as I pointed out earlier, that the liver then tries again to make such compounds water-soluble. And mineral salts are usually water-soluble. I'm not saying all of them, definitely not. Otherwise you wouldn't have any heavy metal contamination or any other things that can cause damage. But we're getting rid of a lot of that stuff. How much then really remains in the body? Let's just leave it at that. I also had two doctors, one of whom is Dr. Rüdiger Dahlke. He also wrote to me that he had always suspected that magnesium was a placebo. So there were also doctors out there who came up to me and immediately supported it. Others intervened on study situations, but as I said, it doesn't matter. We have a solution from the pharmaceutical level via active ingredients that come from traditional Chinese medicine. We which also have these effects. But pharmaceutical means that it is documented, it's proven it really works. And that would now be for abdominal problems. For muscle pain, twitches, restless leg, twitches, but then muscle spasms, not muscle pain. There we are on a completely different intervention level. We'll find some tea for that too, right? Yes, there are corresponding things, of course. We'll do that another time. Of course there is. We just can't mix everything together. As a scientist, then, of course, I am asked to stop it. No, so we have to stick to the main effects. We know that convulsive, let's say in many cases it's called indisposition, so it sounds a bit understated. In other words, things that really make people suffer, but can be intervened appropriately. Thank you very much, dear Hans. And to you, dear viewers, we heard it, these real active ingredients that are in these teas, these pharmaceutical proven active ingredient compactates, they exist. And Professor Hans Rausch mentioned where you can get them. We should just try and test them and compare them. The price range is, of course, very different from that of other teas, that's very clear. I saw it too, but I have already felt the effect on my own body when I tested it. I have to say it's a completely different league in terms of taste and also from the effects. You can really feel that. So that's it on my part. I wish you all the best. Cheers with a fresh, good hot tea. I wish you all the best. See you next time.